Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Sunday's show. On satellite imagery, you can see a band of moisture that rotated northwestward in across southern Alaska, brought the rain into the North Gulf Coast late last night and across south central Alaska today. That pulling off to the west into the Alaska Range. A little bit of clearing coming in behind. Had some sunshine over northern Cook Inlet today, and looked like a break down there toward Kodiak Island. Main low center, that comma cloud there south of the island, and then more moisture with a few showers moving into the southeast interior, and some thunderstorms breaking out this afternoon right through this area. Firstly back to the west toward Norton Sound, or just inland there. And then some more action here northwest of the Denali Park area, but nothing too extensive. A band of clouds draped across the north slope, bringing some fog, light rain, and drizzle to mainly the eastern sections there, and patchy areas of fog back to the west, and then a lot of sunshine here. North slope across the Brooks Range down into toward the Seward Peninsula. Not as much sunshine as you saw yesterday there. Some clouds slipping down from the north into the area, but still not a bad day here. Yukon Delta looking really nice, and then these bands of showers moving westward there across Bristol Bay, but not a whole lot of precipitation there. Bethel, for example, just picking up 0.09 of an inch in the last 24 hours. Focus here south to north right into Cordova. They picked up about 3/4 of an inch of rain in the same time period. And by contrast, Yakutat just having 2/100ths. And the bulk of that rain stayed off the coast. In fact, just about all of it did here. That mainly due to this developing wave. Looked like yesterday some of that might slip in, but the developing wave here gave more of a southeast component to the wind flow there, holding it off the coast. High pressure and over the area today. Mostly sunny skies, temperatures well into the 70s. In fact, Juneau had the state's high of 77 today. Nice conditions all the way down into Dixon Entrance, and temperatures well into the 70s here, really from the 40-mile country back to the northwest. Low clouds and fog again pretty prevalent over the central and southern Bering Sea. Only 1/100th of an inch of rainfall in Unalaska there, but a little bit of light rain along the Alaska Peninsula back out to the west. Some breaks here over the western Aleutians. Some breezy conditions. Nikolsky northwest gusting 25 miles an hour today. Westerlies 10 to 20 around Adak and Atka. Shemya socked in this afternoon with dense fog. Visibility is a 1/4 mile. On the chart, here's that front this morning, right around the coast. Since breaking apart, kind of hard to track it. Several bands moving in with that. The main one right through here with the rain pulling back to the west. Thunderstorms breaking out first in this area and then off to the east. Pretty scattered, a little more widely scattered stuff, as I mentioned, northwest of Denali Park. Trough up along the north slope, kind of a thermal low here over the interior, with the trough extending all the way back out toward the Selawik Valley area. High pressure over the Panhandle holding this front off to the west. There are some pretty heavy echoes, or heavier echoes, showing up off the coastline. Those initially are sliding up to the northwest, so it's going to keep the rain going here in the North Gulf Coast through this evening. The next one here will move up tomorrow, and that should push the rain eastward far enough to bring some moisture into the southeast coast. And then back out here to the west, there's a lot of moisture. Nothing really too organized, just the leftover stuff sliding southward here. Very weak low over the Alaska Peninsula. Another weak low here over the Kuskokwim Delta areas. and then a couple of weak troughs up there off the Arctic coast, but high pressure holding, although these disturbances tonight beginning to knock it down a little bit here, as you can see, becoming a little less prominent as those pass on by. High pressure develops over south central Alaska tonight, so the showers around the area scattered mainly over the mountainous areas will be diminishing, as well as the thunderstorms toward morning here over the interior, staying mostly along that trough axis or either side of the trough axis all the way up to the eastern Brooks Range. Staying fair, offshore flow, clear skies all the way out to the coastline into the Chukchi Sea. Areas of low clouds and fog, mostly along the eastern Arctic coast. That'll hold through tomorrow. Then this next front pushing northward, could see some small craft advisories. Definitely will see some small craft advisories into the offshore marine area there, maybe trying to push up to the coast, mostly toward the north coast, maybe tomorrow afternoon as that front pushes northward. But for tonight, just look for increasing chances of rain late tonight on the outer coastline, staying wet up along the north coast, drying out a little bit there for Prince William Sound, some isolated showers over the Wrangell Mountains. And for tomorrow, front right up into about this position roughly, and so increasing chances of rain here for the southeast coast throughout the day. And actually, depending on the timing, this may actually be right over the area by midday tomorrow. So could be a pretty rainy day, and possibly if it moves through sooner, then it will scatter out to some showers late in the afternoon, especially out along the coastline. Otherwise, periods of rain back into the North Gulf Coast, coming down toward Kodiak Island. Scattered showers developing late morning, afternoon hours here over the mountainous terrain of south central Alaska. Again, some day much like today here over the interior. Areas of pretty good sunshine, maybe the Kuskokwim Valley up to the northeast. Back to the west here could clear out again, be a mostly sunny day for Seward Peninsula, like you saw yesterday. Definitely up here over the northwest. Just some scattered, isolated thunderstorms developing here in these areas, otherwise looking mostly sunny. And again, the low clouds and fog there in the eastern Arctic coast. Winds not that big of a problem. Enough gradient there for maybe east-northeasterlies, 10 to 20 miles an hour at times in areas. Northwest breeze here, keeping it socked in along the Bering Sea side of the peninsula at times with better conditions south. And a little bit stronger system poised to move into the Aleutians there. This slips over the top, allows the high to rebuild a little bit here, especially in advance of that storm. But we'll see, looks like stronger winds will finally make their way, stronger as in 25, maybe 30 knots into the far western Aleutians tomorrow night. And then on Tuesday, begin to progress eastward. West-southwest flow pushing the moisture, the warm front rain spreading into Adak and then Atka. And even this trough could bring some light rain, drizzle, IFR type conditions there into the eastern Aleutians, but winds will stay light, just become, instead of northwest, west-southwest through this area. And see that all aimed right at the Pribilos for late Tuesday night and into Wednesday. Otherwise, low clouds and fog, what's left of that ridge hanging over the eastern Bering Sea areas, keeping winds light over St. Lawrence Island. Lots of sunshine here from the Tanana Valley or the White Mountains northward all the way to the Arctic coast. Just some patchy fog. Again, the lowest conditions will be on the east side there. Offshore flow keeping it VFR, clear sky, sunshine, warm temperatures, 70s, 60s to 70s. And of course, cooler along the coast, and isolated thunderstorms to scattered to widely scattered showers here, Copper River Basin, possibly into the Kenai Peninsula. We have this low just east of Kodiak now. The upper level low slowly pulling northeastward, so that's going to send a couple of bands of showers into the North Gulf Coast, and then eventually into the Panhandle. The front now off to the east and washed out, and just watching this slowly move northeastward here for the next several days and into the middle of next week. For the temperatures this afternoon, 65 in Sitka, about the same down at Klawock, 76 at Juneau, they had a high of 77, 72 at Hoonah, 58 at Yakutat, 68 both at Gulkana and McCarthy, 56 with rain in Cordova, 60 at Seward, 64 in Anchorage, 66 degrees up at Palmer, where they picked up about 0.17 of an inch of rain, and close to that amount both at Kenai and Homer, with a little bit less in Anchorage, 61 up at Talkeetna. Into the lower 70s there for the Tanana Valley, with 75 over at Eagle. And farther up to the north for Yukon, right at 70. These are 4 o'clock readings, 72 at Bettles, 57 Anaktuvik, 39 over at Dead Horse, 36 at Barrow, 45 at Atchison, and 53 Wainwright. Lower 60s here in the Noatak Valley, and 63 at Kotzebue with a 57 at Shishmaref. Nome came in, reported 61 degrees, 57 out at Savunga and Gamble, 60 degrees at St. Michael, Amonik, 72 there at Anvuk, and 68 over at McGrath. Otherwise, lower to mid 60s here over much of the southwest, upper 50s out along the coast. Mid 50s for the Pribilofs, 60s here on the south side of the peninsula with a 55 and a little bit of moisture there at False Pass. 58 on Alaska, 49 Nikolsky, mid 50s here out over the Aleutians. And for the lows tonight, 30 to 35 Arctic coast and portions of the North Slope, but along and south of the Brooks Range into the 50s, and then upper 40s to lower to mid 50s here over the southeast interior, southeast coast, mostly in the upper 40s to, well, mostly in the 50s. And for the Aleutians, lower to mid 50s. Highs tomorrow, upper 50s, not much change out here. Lower 60s for the peninsula. A lot of 70s here from the Kuskokwim River northward, across the Yukon and eastward all the way into northwest Canada in that 70 to 77 degree range. Cooler 30s again on the Arctic coast, especially around Barrow, and 40s elsewhere, with mostly a little cooler now, 60s for the southeast coast. Flying weather, big area IFR here out in the Gulf of Alaska, bigger than the Gulf of Alaska, extending back to the east side of Kodiak Island and on in toward Dixon Entrance, especially along the coast of Prince of Wales Island here, catching Port Alexander, otherwise the remainder of the southeast coast, looking a little on the marginal side, VFR, Cook Inlet, back into Bristol Bay there with the IFR continuing along the Alaska Peninsula, all of the Aleutians, much of the Bering Sea, all the way north to the Bering Strait. Then get into that offshore flow wind situation, and it's VFR north of the strait across the Chukchi Sea, areas at times of IFR in the eastern Arctic coast. Passes Anatuvik wide open, either entrance, same forecast for Adigan, looking good there. Lake Clark and Merrill, good VFR tomorrow. Rainy VFR, and windy, any clouds will be of the VFR variety. Same thing for Isabel, Mentasta VFR, Tanita open, and then Portage, call it marginal VFR in the eastern entrance, but probably be VFR on the west side. For Chilkoot and White, things becoming a little marginal. For the freezing levels, again, not much of a thermal gradient here across the state. Even north to south, really not much change with the main jet here. You got up to 12,000 feet, 8 to 10,000 feet there across the southeast coast, and little temperature change out over the Bering Sea. And icing threats, kind of a band of mixed to rime icing right through here with that old frontal and trough boundary there, getting more mixed or more scattered over the eastern interior. And then with the systems coming up to the north, look for rime icing, light to isolated moderate below 16,000 feet here over the western areas. And with that more southerly flow, deeper moisture, maybe below 25,000 feet for the panhandle. And the upper level low moving slowly northeastward, kind of angling around back toward Yakutat tomorrow, but the whole pattern will be shifting northeastward over the next couple of days, so that'll eventually push the next front through and bring more rain into the southeast coast. High pressure out here over the northern Bering Sea and eastern Russia. With this ridging and the southwest flow, this will be breaking down, cutting underneath, and storminess will spread eastward across the southern Bering and the Aleutians tomorrow, Tuesday, and continue eastward, probably showing up maybe Thursday or that time period later in the week into Bristol Bay and eventually Kodiak Island. For the 9,000-foot winds, southeast 25 to 30 knots for the Panhandle, up to 40 possible here at 9,000 feet for the North Gulf Coast, light and variable here over the interior, and northwesterlies 15, maybe as high as 25 knots across Dutch Harbor on Alaska, westerly flow across the Aleutians, lighter winds and more variable conditions, with several lows here, keeping the winds really light, but pretty tight system here, 45 knot easterlies coming up in toward the North Gulf Coast, southeast 25, mostly off the coast of the Panhandle. And for turbulence, light to isolated moderate chop, possibly here due to those winds, east winds, along the western Arctic coast there, Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, and maybe a little bit kind of a gradient there across the eastern Brooks Range. Could result in a little bit of choppiness, but the big area mostly along and off the coast of the moderate type here, 68,000 feet and below, just possibly getting as far west as Kodiak Island, but for the most part the bumpier stuff will stay off the coastline. and the Bering Sea and the Aleutians looking really good. This probably will slip on in tomorrow night and, of course, on Tuesday. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
There's a big investment here. Between the ship and its cargo, we're talking millions of dollars. Ensuring that it all arrives safely at the next port is a heavy responsibility for the captain and crew. Once clear of inshore waters, there's not much between the ship and its destination, except weather. And it's weather that makes ocean shipping a dangerous business.
What's got me is just the speed, how fast it's going. It's going real fast, and they usually don't build up.
No, then you're going to dissipate somewhere along the line.
Yeah, see, because it says here even 3 days later, it's still only going to be at 80 knots.
The only thing you can do is
just keep going the way we're going.
Even with the latest electronic equipment, anticipating changing ocean conditions remains a challenge. Weather is estimated to be responsible for 80% of all losses at sea. So, for the mariner, timely and reliable weather information is crucial.
Despite the technological advances made in marine forecasting, there remain only 3 basic sources of data for the marine forecaster. 1 are buoys, 2 are the satellites, and 3 are the ships at sea. And when the clouds roll in, obscuring the satellite's vision, and you move offshore out of the buoy's range, there remains only their ship reports to provide the cornerstone for the forecasting process.
The only effective way to obtain real-time local marine weather information is by reports from ships at sea. And that's the job of the Voluntary Observing Ship Program.
De winden gehad en als wij dus door eren heen gaan, worden de winden noordoost.
The providers and users are found aboard ships operating on all the world's oceans.
The VOS program is a surface data acquisition program under guidelines established by the World Meteorological Organization. It's the largest observing program in the world with 1,600 observing platforms maintained by the U.S. on board moving ships, 7,300 ships worldwide operating in the program.
Weather data from ships is collected and analyzed at the National Weather Service's National Center for Environmental Prediction. Forecasters use ship data to develop the high seas forecast. Sometimes it's the only data available.
This guy right here averages about 3 high, so it looks like he's a 28, but he's actually like a 25.
The National Weather Service VOS program generates just under 400,000 ship reports annually. Worldwide, all VOS programs together produce about 1.3 million ship reports annually.
In the United States, the VOS system is coordinated by port meteorological officers.
Hey, Jim, how you doing?
Pretty good, how are you?
Long time no see.
Yeah, it has been a while.
Officers like Jim Saunders recruit and train marine weather observers.
Yeah, we're just talking about the tropical storm Barry coming up here.
They maintain the equipment and are continually seeking ships and volunteers. The VOS program operates at no cost to the vessel. Communications charges, observing instruments, and reporting supplies are furnished by NOAA's National Weather Service.
There's no adjustment needed, so perfect, good shape.
Bound from New York to San Juan, Puerto Rico, the Sealand Consumer is a typical ship participating in the VOS program. Its crew knows the value of an accurate high seas forecast.
Well, I'm the chief mate on this ship, and I've been going to sea for approximate 40 years. you know, you're out here at sea, and you want to know what's going on, because your life and the safety of everybody depends on it, like the cargo, of course, and the whole ship. If you don't know what the weather is doing like this, you might be in a heap of trouble, especially nowadays, where everything is bound by time. We are like a railroad, everything is on time, so it's important to know what the weather's like.
Reliable observations are key. Good data from ships means good forecasts in return. So accuracy and attention to detail are critical.
There's two important things when you submit shipboard meteorological data. One is accuracy and the other is timeliness. If you put in bad data, you're going to get a bad forecast out. If you trust somebody else who's put in data immediately prior to yours because you don't want to go out and under the bridge wing and observe the swell or the sea state yourself, then you're trusting in that person. And that isn't the real data that's happening right now. Timeliness is extremely important in submitting your data. If it's late, or you've saved it for the next report and putting two reports into the same time, then your synoptic value is totally lost. The idea is to get your report in as close to the synoptic hour as possible.
Weather data is normally transmitted to the National Weather Service 4 times daily, corresponding to most weather prediction model runs.
These reports are submitted in Zulu time or Greenwich time or Universal Time Coordinator, whichever term you want to use, but they're submitted at these synoptic hours every 6 hours all around the world the same time, so that when Klaus Mueller is taking an observation in Germany on board his ship at 0600 Zulu, John Thompson in the Pacific is also taking it at 0600 Zulu, and those times are exactly the same. So no matter where you are in the world, the synoptic time will remain the same, and the data taking time is exactly the same for everyone.
Welcome back. We'll look for more of a south and southeast direction here in the winds along the coast. Should stay for the most part under small craft advisories, but looking at 20-knot winds up along the north coast, light and variable over the inside waters, and south maybe up to 20 knots Lynn Canal. And then for Tuesday, that pattern holding up here in the north, and then just a slight breeze here from the west-southwest over the inside channels, and then not much change here southeast or east-southeast, 20 knots. Possibly 25-knot winds here just to the west, and then lighter winds on down the coastline. For south-central Alaska, or Cook Inlet, southwest 15 from the Forelands on up, and then light variable winds all the way back across Shelikof Strait. Northerlies at about 15 on the east side of the island. Northeast 20 here for the Barren Islands and western North Gulf Coast, and variable for Prince William Sound. And then those variable winds will stay light, but maybe take on more of a easterly direction there. East 15 for the North Gulf Coast, northeast 20 here, and 15 knots Kodiak Island, kind of in that 15 to 20, maybe 25 knot range later in the day, but variable. Shelikof Strait up in Torkamishak Bay. Southeasterlies here, 15, could see higher gusts, as high as 25 knots coming out of Turnagain Arm Tuesday afternoon into the evening. For Bristol Bay, westerlies 15 to 20 knots tomorrow, otherwise west to northwesterlies at around 10 for the remainder of these marine zones. And for Tuesday, west 15, not much change here for Bristol Bay. Northwest breeze here for the peninsula and southwest of Kodiak Island, mostly west. Pretty light, really 5 to 10 knots. And for the eastern Aleutians, northwest 15, seas 5 feet tomorrow. Westerlies coming down from, especially for Atka, down to about 10 knots from the west, what's left of that ridge, right over the area, but on the west side of that, 15 up to 20 knots out towards Shemya. And then for Tuesday, looks like Kiska Island westward here, southwest 25, good for some small craft advisories as stronger system starts to push into the western areas there. The 20-knot winds pushing eastward as well. Southwest now for the entire area, but still pretty light there for the eastern Aleutians at about 10 knots. For the southwest coast here, south of Nunivak Island, looking at westerlies at 15 there, blowing into Kuskokwim Bay. Otherwise pretty light here from Nunivak Island on up to St. Lawrence Island, northern Bering Sea, light northwesterlies, Perbeloff's northwest at 15 knots with seas running generally 5 feet or less. And then on Tuesday, things starting to turn around a little bit, starting out variable and light, taking on a southerly direction for the Pribilof, southeast for the northern Bering. Light southwest breeze here along the southwest coast, and really light winds right under the ridge axis there for St. Lawrence Island, so pretty calm. For the Arctic coast, northeast 15 to as high as 20 knots here on the east side, northeast maybe 25 knots here at times for areas of the western Arctic coast, and then dropping back, kind of curving around here from the northwest in toward Kotzebue Sound. That same pattern on the wind direction holds through Tuesday, staying light, a little lighter there for the areas west of Cape Lisburne and Point Hope. And then easterlies, about 20 knots, 15 to 20 knots. Does look like it'll be lighter for the central coast than it will be for the west side. And about 15, gradual increase in these winds becoming easterly. Gradient tightens up enough to suggest small craft or brisk wind advisories there for the eastern Arctic coast. Kaktovik and over to Demarcation Point. For tonight, again, that's where most of the cloudiness and fog will be on the eastern Arctic coast there, with isolated thunderstorms tonight and this evening, again, beginning to diminish late tonight and early tomorrow, but some showers could extend all the way back toward Bethel, St. Mary's, and those areas. Extensive low clouds and fog creating lots of IFR out here over the Bering Sea down to the Alaska Peninsula. A few breaks, but few and far between. The first front here gone. High pressure builds in a little bit here by comparison, almost as, by default, as this next system kind of merges with the original low, and another front pushes northward, bringing rain into the southeast coast tomorrow and up to the North Gulf Coast. Scattered showers for south central Alaska. Good night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.